Hello and welcome to Mental Health Mondays. We are so happy that you are here with us. Want to welcome my co-host, Dr. White. So good to see you. Thank
Good to
you
see you as
for
well.
doing this program with me. Welcome to everyone who is watching. And I'm going to ask that for you, those who are watching, please share on your social media right now that you are watching a program on mental health. It's live. Call in with, or not call in, but with your questions about family. We're talking about family. So we're taking all your questions about family. And this could be from parenting issues to you're an adult and you have questions about things that went on in your family or just things that have impacted you throughout your life. We're taking your questions, and while we are allowing you guys to do that sharing on your social media, we'd also like to know where you are viewing from. So please put in the chat where you're viewing from. We love to see that. I see that we're getting some. I think we have maybe one question in there so far. Those who you watched part one a couple weeks ago, you can also, if your question was not answered, please resubmit your question. We'd love to follow up and answer your questions. And so, yeah, so we have Joe from England in the UK. Welcome across the pond. We welcome you. What time is it there in England? It's pretty late. What time is it?
You're like 8 hours ahead.
That's you. They're 8 or 9 hours of California, I
Oh,
believe. So
all right.
that's okay. They're about 5 hours, I think 6 hours ahead of us. But yeah, put in the chat what time it is there in England. Welcome to Clint, who is a regular from Texas.
Love it. Love it. Good to see you, Clint.
Clint is always here. Oh, it's is it 10 p.m.? 10 p.m. In is that 10 p.m. or let's see,
001. 1 a.m. 1
1
a.m.
a.m. Poor me. Yeah.
Yeah.
1 a.m. Because I was like, wait, it's 7 p.m. here. How can they only be 3 hours? Yeah, okay. One. Oh, okay, Joe. Thank you for staying up. Maybe you were already up. I don't know, but
Yeah.
thank you for staying up. To what we definitely have to get to Joe's question since it's
Midnight. Yeah. So make sure you ask your question first, Joe. I guess
I
it's 10
think
minutes past
I
midnight.
think I think he already put something in the chat. There it is.
Oh, nice.
There it
Okay.
is. And we can tackle that one. And as we're tackling it, you can continue to put in the chat where you're viewing from, and you can please share on your social media as well. So Joe says, I've gone through family trauma and now really struggle with building relationships. Wow. Is that not
Yeah.
a lot of people's stories, I should say. I went no contact with my sis last year, but now I feel she's trying to shove it under the carpet. What should I do?
Excuse me.
Yes, bless you. I'm not sure
Thank
if
you.
I went no contact. So I don't know, Joe. Were you not talking to your family members or just not talking to your sister specifically? Um, I'm not sure. What is your take on that question, Dr. White?
Well, I've gone through family trauma. I think that allows us to talk about, the nature of family trauma and how it can impact when you're going forward now to build relationships. One of
Mhm.
the key features of trauma is how disorienting it is.
Yeah.
Trauma leaves you with questions. Why is that happening? What exactly is happening? Why is it happening to me? Did I have some role in it? And so you just get bombarded with tons of questions, and it's incredibly disorienting.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it's interesting that you said, I really struggle with building relationships because um, naturally trauma makes it difficult to then have relationships, because what's a core part of having relationships? Setting
Right.
boundaries.
Right.
Setting boundaries, enforcing consequences. And sometimes trauma can make you feel like you're not even deserving of setting boundaries.
Mhm.
And of course, if you don't set boundaries and enforce consequences, then it kind of positions you to be further re-traumatized
Right.
and thereby then recoil from relationships, because you don't really get out of it what you're supposed to get out of relationships, and that is give and take.
Mhm.
give and take. So what you're underscoring, though, is the importance then of getting the work done so that you can get good answers to your questions. So you can get some clarity
Mhm.
on, on how you were impacted by the trauma. And then it also can equip you with the ability to understand what boundaries you need to set and think through what should be consequences if those boundaries get violated. And that's why it's so critical to do it with the support of someone who's got some actual skill and training in
Right.
the area. Because when you get clarity and when you get effective strategies, it can be incredibly rewarding. So Joe further goes on to say, but sis, you were going to hop in?
No, just kind of commenting what he added here, that he had, it sounds like he had set a boundary. Well, not speaking to her. It sounds like that's what he decided to do. So I'm assuming that's the boundary he used to, I guess, protect himself from the situation that was happening. And then, like he said, she reached back out after a year or so because their father is really sick, and I'm sorry to hear that. And then contacted him, and then is not. Sounds like that family member is no longer abiding by that boundary that you set. And so a lot of times, sometimes things like this happen where boundaries can get blurred when other family situations happen, like what you're experiencing with your father being ill. And so reestablishing that boundary, if is very important and can be done by none other but yourself. And so reestablishing that boundary is very important if that emotionally keeps you in a safe place.
Right. Well said, sis. And then, yeah, I mean, you can obviously see why getting that counseling support can be so critical, so that they can then give you guidance specific to the issue. Because, sis, it's almost sounding like I don't know if he's clear whether he wants her to call or not, because if dad really is sick, then he probably wants to know about it. So
Oh
it's
yeah.
really kind of complicated.
Yeah. Right. It is kind of complicated. And maybe the initial knowing is what he needed to know. And then after that, maybe if there's constant communication after, then that might be too much for a person. And we're just assuming we're not,
Right, exactly. We don't
yeah,
know the
we don't
details,
know.
but
Yeah.
an expert armed with the details might really be able
Mhm.
to get you some resolution or help you gain some real clarity. So, well said. Now we got a question from Gigi.
Okay.
She said,
Hey,
"This is from
Gigi.
my neighbor." Sure, it is, Gigi. She just did the. Hey, this is for my friend. I'm joking, Gigi. If you
I
say
think it
your neighbor,
is. I don't think Gigi has a
yeah,
three-year-old
I
son.
don't,
Okay.
I don't think she has any qualms. New man in my life. My 3-year-old son has a meltdown if we even just hug. He gets angry if we even call each other babe. We just avoid doing anything that upsets him. What do you think, sis?
Wow. Well, I mean, he's 3 years old and he's used to being with his mom. It made me think of, we were just with our 2-year-old granddaughter. She just turned 2. And so my middle daughter and oldest daughter like hugged each other in the kitchen, embraced each other. They were being silly, but they embraced each other. And then the baby just came up, at at their knees basically, and was just like, wait a minute, my mommy is hugging somebody else. And
Yeah,
so she wasn't happy with it. So at that age, he definitely, it sounds like, I mean, at that age, they know when their caregiver is giving attention to somebody else and they're just not used to it. And so, again, not really knowing everything about this situation, but just knowing that the son is with his mom quite a bit and doesn't is not used to his mom showing that type of attention to other people. So I think like introducing it to him slowly, because this is new. What
yeah.
say you?
I'm going to concur with you and do a little deference since you're so much closer to that issue of having an intimate acquaintance with someone that young. So, yeah, I'm a little far removed from that, given that mine is like 19 years old now.
Yeah.
So it's been a minute. But yeah, good luck with that, Gigi. And I think my strategy with kids is lots of questions. Hey, what does
Mhm.
that mean to you? And them then allowing their language to get you on their cutting edge,
And
because
he's 3, so I don't know what
there's
that
not a lot
3
of
there's
language.
not a lot.
Yeah. So it's just like you said. I mean,
Right.
this clearly is probably a phase. So yeah, but that's my best hunch.
Yes.
Okay, we have Deborah Hailing. How can a person in a codependent relationship of any kind without, how can a person be in a codependent relationship of any kind without letting people control you, or should you be in those kind of relationships at all? So we can talk about codependence.
Right.
So there's this great book, Codependent No More.
Mm.
Um,
Mhm. Yes, it is.
Beatty. Beatty. I remember her last name, I think, is something like Beatty. But anyway, yeah, codependent no more. And so with codependence, you're often trying to do for someone what they need to do for themselves.
Mhm.
Um, and and they tend to, yeah, boundary setting tend to be a struggle, and respecting your rights. So things can often be a struggle with codependency. And I think the issue of being clear on your boundaries is relevant in this question as well.
Mhm.
And in order for you to have clarity on your boundaries, you have to have a healthy self-respect. Because to set boundaries, you have to feel like you're deserving of setting boundaries.
Mhm.
And that comes from understanding and having a meaningful intrinsic sense of value. So when you value yourself, you're going to understand, and I also have the right to set boundaries and enforce consequences if those boundaries are violated. So we're not going to get through life in isolation. We're going to be in relationship. What if your boss is codependent? You know, what if,
Mercy.
yeah, what if a family member is codependent? So I think to a degree, we are going to be limited in how much we can restrict ourselves from all relationships, but it'll constantly come back to what boundaries do you set, and what do you enforce if the boundary gets violated? What are your thoughts, sis?
Well, I'm wondering if the person who's asking the question is the person who the codependent person is dependent upon them and they have a hard time saying no. So being able to practice saying no. When I have clients like this, and they have a difficult time saying no to the codependent person, some of their homework is to say no, like during that week that we don't see each other during that week, to practice saying no in situations that they normally cannot. So it can be a very difficult homework for them. But learning how to set that boundary by saying no is huge, and feeling okay with it, letting them know that they don't have to be an emotional, well, not even just emotional, but a slave to the codependent person, to whatever they want, that you actually can set your own boundaries and that it's okay and you're not being selfish, that you're, setting a boundary for your space to be healthy in your life, and also hopefully being an example to them that this it's not healthy for them to be codependent upon you.
Yeah. Sometime back, I think I talked about the beautiful no, right? Do you
Mhm.
remember that at all?
I
It's
think I
vague, right?
remember vaguely. I think
It's
vaguely.
vague. But I talked about the beautiful no, and it's especially helpful with people who struggle with saying no. Like, your
Mhm.
no doesn't have to be ugly. Your
No, it
no can
doesn't.
be beautiful.
Yes, it can.
And what the beautiful no means is this process where you don't say yes automatically. You stop doing that. You stop saying yes.
Right.
You more shift over into getting additional information.
Mhm.
Let me get additional information. Let me learn more about that. Now, one of the core mistakes we make is that we often do not listen to people enough. So part of even engaging in asking questions communicates to the person that you respect them enough
Mhm.
to ask questions and get details. So they actually feel validated by the fact that you're getting questions.
Right.
But in the process of doing so, you're also clarifying if this is something that you need to do. So getting additional questions is critical. And then it also pattern interrupts you automatically saying yes. Just because you want to resist that little twinge, if you
Mhm.
say no, you know how people, I can't believe you're saying no. And like,
Right.
just because you want to resist that. But so you avoid that little 5 minutes of discomfort, but then you take on, after you say yes and you get that little good feeling, yes, I'm so glad, I love you, I love you, I love you. Now for the rest of the time, as you walk away from that conversation, you're miserable.
Mm.
So it's better to just get that little thing up front. But the bottom line is you start asking questions. You don't go into automatic yes.
Mhm.
And then the other piece you do is you also can say, okay, well, let me gather some more details. I'm not saying no, but I'm not saying yes yet. So give me a chance to go get some more details. If you need an answer right away, though, maybe I just have to say no. But if you can wait, let me get some additional details. Then you can go home to your family, to your loved ones, the people who are invested in you emotionally, and you can say, do I have time to do this? You
Mhm.
know, if you have a significant other, have you been seeing so much of me that I have time to do this? Is there an echo?
Oh, are people saying there's an echo?
No, no, I'm asking. No.
I don't know. I don't hear an echo. I
Oh, beautiful,
don't hear
beautiful.
echo.
Good. Well, so now you can actually get from people that love you whether it's really wise for you to do this, whether you have time and resources, additional resources to do this thing.
Mhm.
And so then after that, you can then go back to the person and then say, you know what? I've considered your thing. I've talked it over. I've given it some serious thought and I really like it, but I'm going to have to pass on this at this
Mm.
point. And so it's a really careful way
To
of
say,
doing it.
have to say no.
Yeah. It's a
Mhm.
really careful, it's a beautiful way of saying
Mhm.
no. It shows
Mhm.
that you really thought about it
And considered it. Yeah.
and considered it. So you
Mm.
don't have to feel like if you say no, it's got to be ugly.
Mhm. Mhm. Yes, it does not. It can be a beautiful no. So we should practice saying beautiful, thoughtful no's.
And your yes can be ugly. Your yes
Yes.
should be ugly. And what that means is it's the same process. Hey, let me go. Let me get more details. Let me go get more details. I can go
Right.
home, find out from my loved ones if I have time for this. But
Right.
then some of the things we don't ask about is, hey, what is your expectation as far as me fulfilling this? Are you
Mhm.
going to provide resources so that I can finish this thing the way you want me to finish it? And what are you paying for gas? Are you like what is your expectation?
Right.
So that now you can get clear and you can now go back and the yes can be a little ugly. You know
Mhm.
what? Yes, but I'm going to need some gas money.
Yes.
Or yes, but actually you're going to have to compensate my time for this because this is time away from my family. And yeah, this is actually going to take quite a bit of time. But your yes can be ugly.
Mhm. Would you say that people who, have codependent, behaviors can tend to pick out people who are people pleasers to be codependent on? I don't know if they consciously do that, but do you think those
Well, no, I mean,
together?
absolutely. Well, but the thing with codependence, like
Mhm.
the typical picture of codependence, for example, is you often see it, for example, with a person who's married, like say, to an addict. And
Mm,
so the codependent person, what they're going to do is they're going to take it upon themselves to make sure the addict doesn't use.
mm,
Like that's the dynamic you often see where the
right,
person is codependent. And the bottom line is they're trying to do for someone what that person needs to do for themselves.
right.
And so now they're going to try to be controlling. They're going to try to be, trying to really monitor the person and do all this kind of stuff. And it's like,
Mhm.
dude, they're an adult and you cannot take away from them their free will,
Right.
obviously, and so that's typically, you know, the dynamic that we see, especially in an addiction context.
Mhm. Mhm.
But do codependent people seek out people that they can exploit? I would have to think about that one. I have to think about that.
Mhm.
But you do find, for example, um, like a antisocial, pairing up with a borderline. Like,
Right.
you do kind of see that,
Yes.
a lot.
Yes, you do. We have another question actually. This
Okay.
is from Faith. Welcome, Faith, to Mental Health Mondays. Um, she says, I struggle with bipolar and my son struggles with depression as well. This combination makes it hard to discipline him for small behavior problems with respect for adults. Do you have any suggestions?
Okay. Well, Faith just used the term bipolar disorder, so it's worth defining what bipolar disorder is.
Mhm.
So with bipolar, bi hints that there are two poles.
Right.
So one pole is manic, the other pole is depression. Mania is categorized by a reduced need for sleep, being grandiose, significant shifts in mood, increased irritability. Yeah, just it's really dramatic. And then of course depression is, you're having suicidal thoughts. You can be having thoughts of death and dying. You can be experiencing a depressed mood. You're not enjoying things you normally would enjoy. And you basically meet the criteria for a depressive episode.
Right.
So with bipoles, you can have a depression or you can have it really should be, you can have mania or you can have
Yeah,
depression.
depression, right.
So the key thing though is a bipolar disorder diagnosis is made after medical issues have been ruled out and it's a formal diagnosis. So
Mhm.
sometimes people will just label themselves bipolar and they
Right.
have not been formally diagnosed. So
Right. 'Cause they're
let's pretend you've been formally diagnosed, and then you said my son struggles with depression as well. Um, and so I think it's fantastic that you're highlighting this is a really complicated situation.
Mhm.
And but the key here is that you can see this should get guidance. This should really get therapy because this is complicated. And so that would be the thing that, like, parenting is hard enough.
Right. Even when, the child is not dealing with mental health issues, parenting is definitely hard enough.
And
But
the
then
parent,
and
isn't
the
dealing
parent
with
and the
it.
parent dealing
Right.
with mental health issues. So knowing how to navigate those definitely needs a mental health professional to assist.
Absolutely. Because you are at a level of complexity here where that would just be really, really, I think, necessary.
I agree.
So yeah. Okay.
That is our suggestion.
Yeah. Let's see. Let me see. What are some practical tools we can use to reinforce or strengthen our mental health? All right. Thank you for that, Clint.
Yeah.
Um, well, at the Mastermind Institute, we like to talk about your seven vitals. Your seven vitals. And you can go to killingburnout.com to learn about the seven vitals. But I think what I'm championing is that you have seven vital areas of your life. First of all, you should know what they are. You should know the seven vital areas of your life because you should then employ strategies to help you in those seven areas. So the first is spiritual,
Mhm.
and obviously Living Manna. We champion a lot of spiritual resources. You are fed quite a bit.
Yes.
um, we have a pastor who's very passionate about keeping it very practical. And I was so impressed when he actually cited research papers. He cites research papers, it cracks me up. But yeah, so spiritually, you're really fed to really try to understand, your spirituality.
Mhm.
So what you
And
consume, praying, and then practicing from that experience is something that's critical. What were you going to say, sis?
well, I was just gonna say, just knowing who you are created by or connected to, knowing that is key. I don't think I ever told you, but I actually did a presentation. I think I tried to call you or text you, but I didn't get you in time. But I did a presentation with the freshman girls at Oakwood University, and I used
The
it.
seven vitals.
I did. I
Oh, that's
used
phenomenal.
your slides and everything. everything. And I gave you credit. So don't think I took it and acted like I
Oh,
did it. I gave you credit.
that's
And the
awesome.
whole thing. So, anyways, but go ahead. So
No, that's awesome.
I
That's
am
awesome. So then the other thing, so that's spirituality, then relationships. So this is what we're talking about right
right.
now. Um, but Clint, it's so unfortunate that we dive into very complicated relationships, but we don't get tools. We don't get
Right.
practical tools. So we've talked about communication. We've
Mhm.
talked about boundary settings, so you can, reference those things. How do you set boundaries? How do you communicate effectively? Didn't we talk about how to stop an argument? Didn't we talk about that?
We've have we well, we've talked about so much marriage stuff, how to stop. Well, we did talk about if you're having to step away
Right,
for
right.
20 minutes or so. Yes, yes, we definitely
We
talked
talked
about
about how
that.
to stop an argument. I mean,
Right.
so these are practical tools for relationship.
Mhm.
Time management. Time is a vital thing.
I think I liked what you point out in your series on the 7 vitals with time is treating time like a currency. Like it's
Yes,
yeah, and even when I presented it to the students, to the freshman girls, they really liked it. Is spending 5 minutes the night before, kind of planning your
yeah,
day. That's
yes,
huge. It's huge because
tremendous.
when Clint is talking about your mental health, like just planning out like that and kind of in knowing what you're going to do and planning it out lessens your stress level and even your anxiety about what the next day is going to be like.
Oh, totally, totally. And it's like you would do it at night, you do it in the morning, but you're exactly right. It's having that mindset
Mhm.
about your time that I
Right.
got to manage it. Time is weird in that it's going to go. So the
Right.
only thing you can do is to manage it. And then of course there's resources and developing some strategies to manage your resources. Then of course there's health, so physical health. So that's Tuesdays.
Oh, yes.
What is it? True Health Tuesdays?
True
What is
Health Tuesdays. True Health
Tuesdays?
Tuesdays is so much great information on so many different levels. So
It's
yes,
so striking. So you get both a physician with, the traditional approach,
mhm.
and you get a naturopathic
Naturopathic.
doctor. And so they really just complement one another really
They
well.
do.
So that's health, and obviously we're dealing with mental health. So health goes into physical health and mental health.
Right.
Then purpose, Clint, purpose. We Purpose is such a big deal to us. We do three. We deal with it in 3 dimensions because we talk about the 3 dimensions to your purpose. But so much of this world has a measure of sadness because
Mhm.
they're divorced from their purpose.
Right.
They don't have a system for clarifying their purpose. But yeah, your purpose occurs in 3 dimensions. Yeah, just your go get the book.
Yeah, really
and
go get
then
the book. Or
and
does
then
you have
and
a
then
website too. You
yeah,
can
it's
your website.
killingburnout.com. You can definitely go to killingburnout.com. And then the last one is rest and recreation. Rest and
Mhm.
recreation, because we forget rest and recreation. We don't emphasize rest and recreation. And that's one of my favorite ones,
Yes.
is because rest is an active process,
Mhm.
and it's reinforced by the Sabbath.
Yeah.
It's like it's active. He's like, put intention into stepping into my rest,
Mhm.
because rest is so powerful. Listen to the word recreation, recreation.
I was
So
just telling Ivor this morning that because we lead out in a church on Sabbath, like, yes, it's a rest from my normal duties, but it's not completely a total rest for us. But on Sunday,
oh
that
my
is
goodness.
that is my rest recreation day. And I was just telling him this morning, I was like, I need my Sundays to look like yesterday. And then I feel totally rejuvenated for the week to be able to do. And I got so much done. I got so much done that I was like, wow, it's like 5 o'clock on a Sunday and I accomplished so many things that I need to get done and I feel rested and just relax. So anyways, that rest and recreation time is very, very important.
Well, I mean, that's why, as a member of your board, I will always rubber stamp anything that gets you guys more support
Yeah,
for
thanks.
your Sabbath to be more humane. Because
Yeah, and it's not horrible. I have to say, now that we are pastoring, or he's pastoring, and I'm his spousal support, a church with no walls, Living Man Church. It's way less stressful than it was pastoring a traditional church because,
Good.
first of all, we don't have to drive far to our location. Like,
It's different. No,
church
no, that's
church
good.
starts like where we are. Church starts at 12 p.m. Okay, that's the fact that I can sleep until 10 a.m. on a Sabbath. Like, yeah, I
That is awesome.
not going back to traditional anytime soon. So
Yeah, I mean, yeah, COVID changed the game.
yeah,
All right, we got Crystal Cox. Crystal, it's good to see you.
very good.
I'm very, very partial to regulars. Sis is
Yes,
partial to new people, but I'm
yes.
partial to
Well,
regulars.
I love them both, and I didn't even
Yeah.
ask if this is your if someone's watching for the first time, put a
Yes.
one,
Yeah,
put a
we like
one,
that.
and the regulars, we know who you are because we know your names, and we love you too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Crystal said, how do you get a teenager who has gone to public schools most of their life to get excited about switching to a private school?
Wow,
Ooh, Crystal.
I
You
know that was
you
big.
you
Yeah.
gotta put $25 in the pot for that one. No, we're kidding.
Wow.
We're kidding. I, yeah, what were you gonna start with? Because you're very close to this situation.
Well, I just we talked about the last time, we talked about my prayer journal and just, how important it is for us to be praying for our children to see results, because this is a prayerful thing. I don't know. I don't, you said teenage, right? So that's already that age where um they're, who they hang out with, where they go to school, like they just want to be accepted and be considered cool, if you will. And so leaving a big public high school, and going to a smaller Christian school, that's already challenging within itself. So honestly, my recommendation is, of course, to pray, not to, and to, man, not to
Yeah,
be, to under give empathy to the child and understand, like, hey, I know this is a big switch, like, it's not exactly the same. Maybe highlight the benefits, like just be very understanding of the change that is about to happen to them, because it's not easy.
yeah. Well said, sis. I mean, I think that was brilliantly stated. What I would say is, I'm gonna go off on a diatribe. What I would say is the greatest gift you give your children is the ability to learn.
Hmm.
Like that's like the greatest gift. Like that's the ultimate legacy. I mean, this trumps $1 billion. I'm being extreme, obviously, but that's not even, because if you give a person who doesn't know how to learn $1 billion, it's gone before even know. It's so the greatest gift you give them is how to learn, and then the gift that is even better than that is decision making.
Yeah.
Is decision making.
Yes.
As parents, I think we fall short a lot in not coaching our kids to be great decision makers,
Hmm.
coaching them to develop a process for how they make decisions.
Hmm.
So here's what's interesting. If I was coaching my daughter on driving, imagine her looking back to me and say, hey, so what degree should I turn the wheel when I'm
Hmm.
going out of the parking lot? What degree? You're like, and when I get to the bottom of the hill, what degree should I turn it then? So see, with driving, no, I'm going to teach you the principles. I'm going to tell you what lane you need to be in, but you're the one that has to make the decision of how you're going to observe those rules. All I can give you is guidelines. I can give you guidelines, but really what I want to help you do is know how to make decisions.
Mhm.
So what, and I'll just say this as well, as parents, there are two ways to get your child to behave a certain way. One is force,
Mhm.
and the other is influence.
Right.
And as you can see, we lose the capacity to force pretty quickly. Left, and a majority of what's remaining is influence. We what's left over is the ability to influence. So now I said all that to get now more specific to Ms. Cox. Um, ultimately your goal is to try to partner with the child so you can see how important conversation is, like you were saying, Sister Tante.
Right.
It's like it's so critical to have a conversation where lots of questions.
Right.
um Young person, let's call him Ted. Ted, what do you value? What's important to you? um What's the downside to staying at your school? What's the upside to staying at your school? What's the downside to going to this new school? What's the upside to going to this new school? Ted, what are your priorities going forward? Okay. Where is it that you're hoping to end up? And then you're thinking, which of these schools, which path is going to help you to that final destination? And you have to listen to them.
Mm-hmm.
You got to meaningfully listen to them because you want them engaged in the process.
Yeah.
And this is that evolution of being a good decision maker. What were you going to say, sis?
No, I agree with you 100%. And, make them feel that they are a part of this decision and big move. I think what happens a lot of time to Christian parents, and I understand it because I've been there, is that our we try to make our convictions our children's convictions, and we get upset with them when they're not as passionate about it, and then we don't quite relate to them the same when they're rebelling against our decision, or just reminding yourself that obviously you want them in the Christian school versus the public school because you think it's and maybe you think the education's better, but you definitely think the spirituality of the school is better than a public school. I mean, I'm not for sure that's what you're thinking, but I'm assuming because that's what most people think when they're switching their kids from a public school to a Christian school, and trying to just reminding yourself that this is, these are my convictions, and we of course want that to be our children's convictions, but that's not always what happens. So just giving them some buy-in, again, moving slowly, understanding, showing empathy, as Dr. White said, saying, hey, what are the pros of you going here, and even saying, hey, let's just try it out. Don't come at them like this is something you're for sure going to have to do and stay in this school even if you absolutely hate it. Just let them try it out, kind of take some of the fear and the anxiety away from the situation so that they can just get a taste of what it may be like. But just approach it in a very wise way, allowing God to lead you in this step, because it could go very wrong and they become bitter and just feel very controlled, and you just don't want your relationship to enter into that space.
Yeah, because so I think by at the end of this, you should be it should be clear what you believe are the pros and the cons,
Right.
and it should be clear what you believe, what your child believes are going to be the pros and the cons, and then you guys meet somewhere in the middle. But again, you can see why a therapist would be helpful to address the specific issues which we don't know of
Right.
and therefore can't necessarily advise you.
Right.
Okay, now we have Audrey Barthel. Any suggestions for a grown son who's schizoaffective and high functioning autistic who
Mm,
gets violent and sets off my PTSD to the point where I block what happens? We
mm.
are like oil and water together. So we're kind of limited in not knowing the age, um, not knowing, the confirmation of the diagnoses. So you said you have PTSD. Is that confirmed? And what that looks like when it gets triggered. But I mean, Audrey, I mean, it's then pretty clear that mental health practitioners would be helpful to clarify diagnoses, clarify the role for meds or not meds,
Mm.
clarify the role for, hey, what is the communication style that needs to be employed so that you guys can both get on the same page. Clarify what are the boundaries you need to set so that your son can come to understand that violence is not an option and there are consequences, to violence. Those are all the things that you have to work towards. And in that little brief, diatribe, I hope you see that the level of complexity would warrant getting that additional attention. But those would be the things I would be targeting with the support of my mental health team? Those would be the questions that I would be having them address, and we'd be coming up for strategies. What are your thoughts, Sis?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you that this has to be navigated with mental health professionals who are qualified to deal with these um, um, disorders and issues that she mentioned here. I don't know if her PTSD has been officially diagnosed. I'm assuming that her son, who is grown, that's the schizoaffective, it has been. You don't hear people using that specific diagnosis if it hasn't come from a doctor, but it or yeah, a mental health professional, but definitely a health professional has to be involved for this situation to be able to navigate it in a healthy way.
Yeah, this is a team because
Yeah.
is there a role for psychotropics?
Hmm.
Is there a role for family therapy? Is there a role for, hey, how do we communicate effectively? Is there a role for, hey, how do we set boundaries and what will be the consequences if the boundaries get violated? How do we help this young man understand violence is not an option? So those are quite a number of things that you would want to um, get addressed as far as the strategy. So thank you for the question, Anthony Ferguson. Someone I knew came to visit and I can see something was wrong. So I asked him some questions and found out that he had HIV and he talks about taking his life. Kindly advise how to help him going forward. All right, so this is why with mental health, you hear us chorus get mental health experts involved
Right.
because the stakes are so high.
Yeah.
Um, so whether it's a suicide hotline, whether it's county resources, whether it's a 911, emergency room,
Mhm.
I'll tell you why it's dangerous for anyone, but like for lay people to at times counsel a person who's communicated that they're having thoughts of harming themselves. Um, Communicating effectively, especially in a mental health context, is really challenging
Yes.
because it takes discipline to understand when should you be talking and when should you be listening. And a majority of the time, when people should be listening, they're talking. and and you don't even get the luxury of just sitting back and just listening because the discipline of the field is knowing when to say what you need to say and knowing what to say
Right.
because there is a time to speak.
Mhm.
And so you don't just get the luxury of looking like the way the movies mock us, like you can just sit there and just listen and listen and listen.
And right. And then
No, no, when you're listening, you're collecting with the intent that you are actually going to
speak.
intervene.
Yes.
You're going to actually intervene, so it's not just sitting back and listening. But that's where the training comes in, is
Right.
understanding when to listen and then when to intervene, while all the while making sure that person is clear you're hearing them, and what they have to say is being prioritized. The danger is that someone at times will just listen and will just listen to you and behave in such a way it may persuade you that they're getting through when in fact you have not. When in
Mhm.
fact you have not. And the consequences can be tragic. And that's the reason it is so critical to not overestimate your ability to persuade someone out
Mhm.
of engaging in self-harm behavior, and instead saying, oh, let me get you into professional support, because even with professional support it's challenging.
It's challenging.
But I
Yes.
certainly wouldn't want to take that on as a layperson, given the complex nature that this involves.
Mhm.
And let me complicate it even further. You may even talk them out of it in the instant they were talking to you, but then they leave you and they go back into a stressful situation. They go
Right.
back into a stressful situation because you didn't equip them with tools to handle things you couldn't have even anticipated.
Mhm.
So this is why you want professionals handling that level of complexity.
Correct. Absolutely correct. And it's not on there anymore, so I don't know the person's name who asked the question, but who has the friend, but even giving them, because you're not the mental health, Anthony, yes, Anthony, you're not the mental health professional, but giving them, the number, the hotline, the 988, that's very easy to remember. That's the number that they can call when they're having those feelings that they don't want, or they're having the thoughts that they don't want to be, live any longer. It's very easy to do that. So even passing that along to them is something that you can do, that if they're not connected to a mental health professional, right away, that's something that they can do today. And they can reach out, and those are, professionals that are trained to be able to talk with individuals who are having these thoughts and these feelings. But the most important thing is for anyone who's dealing and talking with someone who is thinking or having thoughts and feelings about taking their life, is that we all understand. If you're not a mental health professional, it's like you need to realize that and understand that, and that you need to encourage them to connect to a mental health professional. But I think just sharing 988 is not, it's easy to do, and it's not offensive to the person, to say, hey, you need to talk to a therapist. I mean, that shouldn't be offensive, but you never know one's mental state, that, someone may, feel that way. But just giving them that resource is something that can help. And so, just to let everyone know, just have that, and you can even put that in your phone, just so that even if you're ever thinking of that, or if you're a family member or a friend, are having those emotions and feelings, 988 is the National Suicide Hotline number, which I think is just genius that they did that instead of this long 1-800, whatever it used to be. 988 is easy. It's just like 911, but it's 988 for mental
Well,
health. So, Anthony, you can definitely pass that along to your friend. And I think there was another question that popped up after. Um, yeah, there it is, 988 National Suicide Hotline. But we're definitely taking, let's see, well, we have about 8 more minutes left, but we're taking your questions on family. Well, it's family, but some of these questions are going into other areas, which is okay. But we're taking your questions on family. And there's been some other mental health questions as well. So, family, I think I put it on my Instagram story that I called it our biggest relationship, meaning like, we're a family of goodness. Now we're a family of seven, because we were a family of six, and our son-in-law is here and our grandbaby's here. So we're a family of seven. I mean, closely knitted family. And so it's our biggest uh group of relationships, right, in our life. And it, typically can cause us a lot. It can bring us a lot of joy, but it can also bring us a lot of pain. And so this is, being a marriage and family therapist, just as people come into the office and they begin to share their story, a lot of the things that they're going through as adults, and the pain that they're suffering, the roots come from family origins and things that, none of us are perfect. And even as our parenting sometimes can cause issues in our children, and we don't mean to. But we're all, in some way, because it's a sinful world, we're all sinners, right? So in some way, we're all somewhat broken. And we don't want to pass those things on to our children, but we do.
right. I
So yeah,
mean, I think it's important to acknowledge that, yeah, no one's family system is going to be perfect.
no,
There are going to be things people do right. There are going to be things that people could have done better.
right.
But at some point, one has to take some ownership and say, you know what? I'm going to take what I have and I'm going to do the best that I can with it.
Yeah.
In my situation, I didn't necessarily grow up with my father, but my way of healing was to say, you know what? I'm going to be to my daughter the father I always dreamt of.
Yeah.
And that was healing, for me. But it was looking forward and saying, I can't control certain things, but how about I control what I can control? How about I control what's within my sphere of influence?
Mhm.
So I think that is critical.
Yes.
But
You're
but I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued by how the family system mirrors life, because, like, you're this child. Your parents, they represent authority. You're gonna
Mhm.
have authority in life,
Oh, yeah.
and so they kind of help you understand how to relate to authority. And then
Mhm.
you're going to have peers. You're going to have peers. And so it's like your siblings kind of help you understand how to deal with peers. My older brother, he was so just. We would be able to work things out.
Is it just the 2 of you?
It's three of us. It's
3. Okay.
older brother and I have a younger brother.
Okay, so no sisters.
No sisters.
I
No
didn't have
sisters.
a sister either.
I have
I
like
wish I
half.
did.
Yeah.
I have enough
But
I have enough daughters, it made up for the sister, and a granddaughter, so I got it. But go ahead. So
but
you
yeah, but it prepares you for life really, because you have subordinates, you have, that's the younger siblings. Then you have exactly. So Amra's my white sister. There we go.
I thought she was talking to me, but
Oh, never mind. She's talking to
no, no,
you. That's
no, she's
right.
talking to both of us. She's our white sister.
Exactly. Exactly. Our sister from another mother.
Oh, god.
Um, along with our brother Terry. But yeah, it's like the family system prepares you for life, and it's interesting how that works. But yeah, at some point you got to stop focusing on everything your parents did wrong and
Oh,
say, you
yeah.
know what, look, I got to take it for what it's worth, and I got to create some value.
Part of, I think, becoming maturity is extending grace to our parents, understanding that um, none of us are perfect. And yes, they've made mistakes, but forgiving them. And sometimes those situations it's not that cut and dry. There's trauma that happens in your childhood that parents could definitely be a part of. The reason why that happened. And so that can be worked out again, with a mental health professional and dealing with those things. But a lot of times, there's situations that we just hold on to that it doesn't really do us any good to hold on to it, and it
Right.
affects, and our parents feel bad about it even, like it's like,
Sometimes.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I can't say
Yeah.
100%, but
Yeah.
they're like, they will say, I've learned a lot throughout the years, but the biggest thing to parents, and I think I've stated this before, is learning how to say, "I'm sorry" to your
Mm,
children. That is
well
so
said.
healing. It's
Well
so
said.
healing, and that just goes a very, very long way. So
And
learning how
it's tragic when pride
yeah,
gags them from doing that,
yeah, that it's unfortunate when pride does that.
because it goes a long way. It goes a long way. No,
Mhm.
well said. Looks like you guys quieted down with the questions.
I
Well,
know. It looks like so. I mean, we have 2 more minutes. So if anyone has a question that they want to get off before we start to sign off, we are open and here and willing to take that question. And if you don't, that's okay too. But it's always a joy to do Mental Health Mondays and to talk about these topics, and even doing this freestyle, because um, you're just able to ask some of your mental health questions that you don't always get to ask to mental health professionals. And so we're
I,
here
I
to,
like I like Clint's comment.
okay.
Clint says the mental and social sphere seem very complex, and that comment is so critical, because a lot of times people even think mental health professionals are pseudo professionals, because
Right.
they think, oh, this stuff is easy. And it's
Mhm.
like, I can't tell you how complicated it can be to understand when should you speak, when should you not speak. In my own marital experience, I've learned, do not say the first, the second, the third, the fourth, which with each year it gets longer and longer.
You would be proud of me. I don't know when it was, a couple weeks ago, and I remember, of course, you've heard said that many times, and I, registered it, and I actually used it. I was like, "Don't say that. Don't say that. Don't say that." I'm literally counting, and don't say that. I'm like at 5. Just don't say anything at this point. Don't say anything.
But it preserves relationships,
Yes.
man, because I can't tell you how many times on reflection, had I said that first thing, I would have made it so much worse.
Yes.
So much. Do they want an example? Like
Oh, I don't
like
even remember what mine was.
well, no, like
Oh.
well, it's like sometimes you're prepared to make a criticism.
Oh,
Okay? You're prepared to make a
easy.
criticism.
Easy.
You
We go to
know,
criticism so quickly.
Yeah, yeah. You're prepared to make a criticism, and then but you bite your tongue and you don't say anything,
Hmm.
only to discover how much the person was struggling.
Right.
Only to discover you because you bit your tongue, only to discover, look how much this person was struggling and how your words would have broken the spirit, you
Right.
know? And so that, I mean, that's just like you just find so often we are way too generous with our words. And
Hmm.
so to Clint's comment, it can be so important to understand those dynamics and those nuances. Well, you have to learn that. You have to learn that. And it's not just listening to people, it's listening, making sure they feel validated, and then understanding how to use that information to help them.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yes. No, great said. Janet said silence is golden. Yes, it is. And before, this is what I would also like to share with married couples or just in relationships. Before you, definitely what you said, don't say the first thing, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. We keep going on. Um, if you, especially in marriage relationships, if you have not told the person what you appreciate about them, or a positive thing that day, definitely don't go to the criticism because the criticism just pops up. We say it so easily, but the appreciation and the good comment and thoughtful comment doesn't pop up as easy. So
That's the comment of the day.
yeah,
That was the comment of the day.
if you
I,
haven't made nice comments or things that you appreciate about them, like you need to be saying that
that's
five
got me.
times to the
That's
one
got me.
time. Yeah. To the
That's gold because I will tell you I've even used that where I had the impulse to make a criticism, I've let it trigger me to actually pay a compliment.
right.
So I was like, oh, I could add a criticism here, and it was like, no, no, pay a compliment.
Yeah. Let me say something positive.
Let me actually say something. I've actually used that. So that was straight gold. That was straight
Yes.
gold.
Yeah.
There's a question for you in the private chat, sis.
Um, oh,
Mm, mm.
yes, Amra, you can do that.
All right.
Yes, it's Amra. Uh,
Well, this was a delight.
it was a delight. We're all out of time. It actually took us we're 2 minutes over, but thank you, Dr. White, and then thank you to all of you who viewed and asked your questions. Again, definitely share this link. The replays, they always go into the multiple hundreds, and so we're always thankful for that. But share with friends and family that we have this program and that there's some questions that we've answered that could uh, be a great blessing to them. And we also have on YouTube, on the YouTube channels, that we know we've been doing this for almost a year. So we have plenty of mental health programs that they can go back and watch. And you can go back and watch too if you haven't caught all of them. So you
Absolutely.
definitely want to do that. Thank you, Clint. Thank you I'm glad it was a blessing. Thank you for always tuning in and just being one of our regulars.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it. All right.
Absolutely.
So, with that, we just want to wish you guys a happy Monday evening somewhere places. It's Tuesday morning, but just have a good rest of your night or day that you're about to approach. We look forward to seeing you all next week right here for Mental Health Mondays.
Thank you all. Bye bye, sis.
Blessings. All right. Have a good evening. Bye bye.
Good evening. Bye bye.